Hi everyone, my name is Jamie and I'm 16 years old. After my father left us, my mother turned into a monster. That was 3 years ago. My father is 100% a jerk and I will never forgive him. But, as you may have already taken away, the main villain in this story is my mother. After my father left, she wasn't herself. For some reason, she took out all of her anger on me. Every time I did something wrong, she would pull out her leather belt. Of course, she was only trying to scare me, but I didn't even have to do anything wrong. I could just be in the wrong place at the wrong time. On the other hand, everyone grieves differently. So I just tried to stay away from home as much as I could. That's how I discovered my school choir. I really enjoyed singing, and more importantly, everyone else liked the way I sang. I started spending all of my free time rehearsing with the choir, and I started to notice some results. After a month and a half of rehearsals, I became a soloist. And after that, there was one performance that changed everything. Our choir was invited to perform at City Day. Regardless of how the event itself went, the focus of this story is that after my performance, some man came up to me with an interesting offer. He said that he loved the way I sang and that he would like me to do a solo performance at a corporate party for the company he worked for, get this, for money. It was obvious that a 13-year-old boy does not just accept offers like this on his own, so naturally, I called my mother. At first, she was against it. Most likely, she was just too lazy to take me there. But when she heard about the amount I was offered, she changed her mind. The corporate party was a huge success, but more importantly, afterward, I became a popular local performer. I was booked for different events more and more often. To help you understand how much I was earning, my mother left her job to become my manager. At first, I thought it would help us improve our relationship, but it actually turned out to be kind of terrible. She took away all the money I earned and spent it on God knows what. Except for food, she didn't buy me anything. But that wasn't even the main problem. When I became her job, she began to treat me much worse than before. And before wasn't that good either. I almost didn't have any free time. I wasn't allowed to watch TV or play video games. She would only allow me to go out with my friends very rarely. And if I started to disobey her, she'd take out her leather belt again. But this was all just the beginning. She demanded incredible vocals from me. At one of the corporate parties, I was so tired and I couldn't sing as perfectly as I usually did, so she took me to the side and screamed at me so bad that the guests were commenting about her. I'd rather not tell you what she did to me at home after that. As you can see, I went to school, then to choir practice, and then I practiced more at home. My mother wouldn't let me go to sleep before I completed all of the vocal exercises she had planned for that day. She even set up a camera in my room to see how hard I was rehearsing. Long story short, I was under constant supervision like some kind of prisoner. I can surely say that this way of life was exhausting. Teachers began to notice that I wasn't able to concentrate in class. So after a while, my mother and I were called in to see the principal. He said that my mother had to ease up on my schedule, but she interpreted this a different way. Instead of stopping to torture me with rehearsals, she decided that the main problem was school. Of course, I didn't want to leave, but no one was asking me. She talked to the principal a little more, one-on-one, and then she took my documents from the school. So, I started spending all my time with my mother. It was hell for me. There was no more school, which meant that there was no pause between her constant yelling and punishment. I was, to put it simply, destroyed. Constant rehearsals, performances, all of this was happening so much that singing actually started to make me feel sick. But this feeling didn't last long because puberty came along and my voice started to change. It was a disaster because my performances were our only source of income, and my mother hadn't saved any of the money I made, even when things were going great. And with my changing voice, I wasn't being booked as often. To fix the situation, my mother forced me to practice vocals even more. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't get my old voice back with rehearsals. Those were difficult times. When it became clear that I was no longer able to earn as much as before, my mother started searching for a new job. Instead of being grateful that I gave her an opportunity to not work for a long time, she was mad that the opportunity was gone. Since she had gotten used to a chill lifestyle, she turned down a couple of good job offers in hopes of finding a better one. But after a while, there was just nothing else available at all. Just imagine, we had to live on a few $100s for almost a month. And you know what my mother came up with? She sent me to sing on the streets like a beggar. At that time, no matter what, I considered her the closest person to me, so not only did I go through with it, I chose the area of the city where no one knew our family, so God forbid she was not judged for her parenting practices. Although it wasn't as cool as it used to be, people still gave me some money. My mother never found a job, but hunger was no longer a problem because she met a man. At first, Luke seemed fine. He brought us food and even helped us financially. Anyway, when Luke came along, I stopped singing on the streets just as quickly as I had started. Everything seemed to have stabilized. My mother even mentioned that I would be able to return to school at the beginning of the next school year. I had an almost perfect life. My mother still yelled at me, but while she was with Luke, I could do whatever I wanted. And I started to have a good time with my old friend Zach again. But after a while, things got worse. I thought that once they were together for some time, Luke would marry my mother and become my stepfather. But unfortunately, I was wrong. One day I came home and saw him yelling at my mother, and not just shouting. I came in at the exact moment that he tried to hit her. Of course, I protected her. I jumped on him from behind and started shouting that I would call the police. Thank God he didn't do anything to us. He just threw me off his back, yelled at my mother some more, and laughed. Spoiler alert, I never saw him again. I was glad my mother was all right, but she wasn't even going to thank me for saving her from him. Instead, she started yelling at me for scaring off such a good option. Man, I had it, and I just lost my temper. I accepted the fact that she snapped at me, the fact that she demanded a lot from me, and I even accepted the begging. But the fact that she values some random dude who she saw for maybe 5 months more than her own son, I just could not stand that. Long story short, I ran away from home. I ran to my friend Zach. He talked to his parents, and when they heard my story, they let me stay as long as I needed to. They were shocked and saddened when they heard about everything I was going through. The first thing I was surprised by was how Zach's parents treated him. I couldn't believe that there were mothers who didn't yell at their children nonstop, but instead tenderly cared for them. Seriously, it was a shock to me, because, as you remember, I was used to a very different attitude. But, little by little, they started treating me the same way they treated Zach. I stayed with them for 2 months, but I'd already become like a member of their family, and my own mother didn't even look for me during all of this. To be honest, it would have been better to stay like this. Everything was fine until she finally showed up. The first thing she did when she came in was cause a scene. She started blaming Zach's parents for stealing me. She even said she'd go to the police if they didn't give me back. But Rose, that's Zach's mom, wasn't having any of it. They almost got into a fight. But in the end, it became clear why my mother showed up. She wanted money. She wanted to sell me to them for just $1,000, as if I was some kind of an object. As if I didn't know before, I now had no doubt that she was a bad person. Zach's parents, on the other hand, are the best people in the world. They gave my mom the $1,000 to finally leave me alone and disappear. And she did leave, but not for long. She came back like a month later, apparently as soon as she had spent all the money. And she asked for money again, this time $2,000. And Zach's parents realized that this could go on forever. So they decided to give me up. My mother was as surprised as I was, but she had to take me with her. I was very upset because I didn't think they would do such a thing. But, as I learned later, it was all part of a larger plan. A couple of days later, Zach's parents came to our house with a social worker, who, after seeing our terrible living conditions, deprived my mother of her parental rights. As Rose later explained to me, this was necessary because if they had announced that they were going to come with social services, my mother could have just prepared for it by cleaning the apartment, etc. And then they would have not been able to take me away. So they managed to adopt me, and now I'm living with them. I am eternally grateful for these wonderful people because, thanks to them, I finally found a good and loving family.